Hi everyone, the video that you're watching now is going to be a summary of the prominent phyla in kingdom Animalia and their prominent characteristics. So we'll take a look at that today, but before that, let's dive into a brief look at taxonomy. So a domain is the highest taxonomic rank among organisms. Within a domain, we have kingdoms, and within kingdoms, we have phyla, and within those, there are classes, then orders, then families, then genuses, and finally, the lowest taxonomic rank, species. So a good mnemonic that we sometimes use is Dear King Philip, come over for good soup. And the first letter of these words will correspond to the ranks of taxonomy. So Animalia is one of the 6 kingdoms of life, and it's within the larger domain Eukarya, which means cells that have a true nucleus and other characteristics of eukaryotic cells. There are also other domains, bacteria and archaea, but we won't get to those today. Other kingdoms within domain Eukarya include Protista, fungi, and plants. Kingdom Animalia has many phyla, but the main ones typically considered in class or in standardized tests are Porifera, Cnidaria, Echinodermata, Chordata, Platyhelminthes, Mollusca, Annelida, Nematoda, and Arthropoda. So we'll start out with the most primitive of phyla and end with the most advanced ones. So again, in this picture, you can see all of the phylums in Kingdom Animalia, and we'll start from the top and go to the most advanced. So let's get to our first phylum, which is Porifera. So as you can see in the image, Porifera is basically synonymous with sponges. There are around 5,000 species in this phylum, and every member lives in aquatic environments. The vast majority of them, 98% of them, live in saltwater or marine environments. Some defining characteristics of sponges include asymmetric bodies and lack of distinct tissue. As with most primitive organisms of kingdom Animalia, sponges only have 2 distinct cell layers with a mesoglial layer in the middle. They are sessile organisms except in their larval stages where they are easily dispersed. Sponges collect food particles via the sweeping of choanocytes and water drawn through the body well where food is trapped and then ingested. The next phylum that we'll look at is Cnidaria. This phylum has approximately 10,000 species. The organisms in Cnidaria developed from a 2-layered embryo, and they have 2 separate tissue layers with a mesoglial layer in the middle. And they are the first phylum to exhibit radial body symmetry. They have a central sac-like digestive system, and there are 2 main life stages of species in Cnidaria. The first is the polyp, where they are upward facing and sessile, and the second is the medusa life stage, where they are facing downwards and mobile. Cnidaria, like coral and jellyfish, have stinging cells, which are used for self-defense or to sting their prey and capture them. This phylum includes organisms like hydras, sea anemones, corals, and jellyfish. Some examples of classes in this phylum are Anthozoa and Cubozoa. So again, some examples of the organisms in this phylum, Anthozoa and Cubozoa, and then other marine species. So Platyhelminthes is the next phylum that we're going to look at, and it's the phylum of flatworms. Platyhelminthes have over 15,000 species, and it's the earliest phylum to have a triploblastic embryo. This means that it has an endoderm, a mesoderm, and an ectoderm tissue, so 3 tissue layers. In addition, they have bilateral symmetry and don't have a body cavity, and thus they're termed acoelomates. There's a space between the digestive tract and the body that's filled with tissue, in contrast with further phylums that we'll look at that will have a coelom. So they are flat bodies and they have a true head and a brain, and their mouth and anus are the same opening. So they are hermaphroditic, which means they have both sex organs and can reproduce by themselves. So some examples of this phylum are tapeworms, flukes, and planaria. So the next phylum that we'll look at is Nematoda, and this is the phylum of roundworms. They, along with Arthropoda, form the group Ecdysozoa, which are characterized by ecdysis or molting. There are over 15,000 species and have some of the most studied species in biology. They are pseudocoelomates, which means that the body cavity is not truly completely covered by the lining of the mesoderm. They are triploblastic like the platyhelminthes, and they live in many different environments from our bodies to the soil. Some of the most commonly known nematodes are parasites such as hookworms that cause many harmful diseases, but some nematodes are actually helpful for plant nutrition. Um, One of the most commonly studied and best documented species in biology, C. elegans, is a nematode. The next phylum we'll look at is Annelida, and this is the phylum of segmented worms. So there are about 12,000 species in this phylum, and they are true coelomates, which means that the body cavity is completely surrounded by the mesoderm tissue layer. In addition, they have closed circulatory systems and have blood vessels that line the length of the worm. They possess metanephridia, which perform the same function as the human kidney in filtration and excretory fluids. This organ is also analogous to protonephridia in flatworms and Malpighian tubules in arthropods, which we'll cover next. So annelids are quite common, and they include polychaetes, which include leeches, and oligochaetes, which are earthworms. The next phylum that we'll cover is Arthropoda, and this is the largest phylum in the animal kingdom. So there are over 1 million species of arthropods, and there are predicted to have many more undiscovered. They are characterized by an exoskeleton and are part of the group Ecdysozoa along with the nematodes. They contain an open circulatory system and possess a fluid called hemolymph, which has the same function as blood. Another analogous organ are the Malpighian tubules, which eliminate waste from the arthropod's body. So the arthropod body plan is divided into 3 groups: the head, thorax, and abdomen. The exoskeletons contain numerous proteins such as chitin and sclerotin and will molt throughout their lifetime. There are many common and well-known species of arthropods, including spiders, wasps, butterflies, and beetles. And beetles actually make up the class Coleoptera, which are the most diverse class of animals. So the next phylum that we'll cover is Mollusca, and mollusks are an extremely diverse group of animals. So the animals that comprise the phylum Mollusca live on both land and in the sea, and in addition, their body plans are incredibly diverse. But they're all characterized by a soft body and a hard shell that's made of calcium carbonate and other proteins that are secreted by a mantle layer. So the mantle is a tissue layer that covers the soft body that's known as the visceral mass and can be seen in species like squids, where the mantle includes the fins and the outer layer. Another commonality is the presence of the muscular foot, or poda, which distinguishes classes like cephalopoda and gastropoda. The mesoderm layer contains a coelom cavity and also a cavity for the circulatory system that's known as the hemocoel. So overall, mollusks are the second most diverse groups of animals behind arthropods and contain some common marine animals. So like I said, mollusks are the second most diverse phylum, and they're composed of the classes Gastropoda, bivalves, and Cephalopoda. And some famous animals that are mollusks are animals like squids and octopus. So the next phylum that we'll cover is the phylum Echinodermata, and this phylum is characterized by a water vascular system. So there are over 6,000 species of echinoderms, and like I said earlier, they're characterized by a water vascular system that's used for locomotion or movement. So along with the phylum Chordata, echinoderms are the only phylum that are deuterostomes with intermediate growth and radial cleavage. They possess an exoskeleton composed of calcium and magnesium carbonate and move by using many small tube feet that are connected to the water vascular system. Some of the most well-known echinoderms are sea stars, which have radial symmetry, but some echinoderms also possess bilateral symmetry, like sea cucumbers. So in addition, they have no true head, and they're oriented with their mouth on the bottom side of their body that's used for ingesting food. So the last and most complex phylum that we'll cover is Chordata. And this is characterized by animals that possess notochords. There are over 40,000 species of chordates and contain some of the most distinctive ones, including our species humans. Chordates are divided into several groups, but the most of them are classified as vertebrates, or ones having true backbones. A few of the defining features of chordates are pharyngeal gill slits, a notochord, a postanal tail, and a dorsal hollow nerve cord. Some of these features can only be seen in embryonic stages, such as a notochord in humans, and the lancelet brachistoma is one of the few living genera of lancelets, and they're used a lot in biology labs. So let's look at a few of the classes in the phylum Chordata. The first class we'll look at is Chondrichthyes, or cartilaginous fish. Their skeletons are made out of cartilage, and they breathe through gills. So some cartilaginous fish lay eggs, while others bear live offspring. And some examples of these species are sharks and stingrays. The next class that we'll talk about is Osteichthyes, or bony fish. They have a skeleton of bones and also breathe through gills. They can be found in both marine and freshwater environments and lay a lot of shellless eggs. Some examples of these are bass, tuna, and trout. The next class that we'll cover is the amphibians, and these are known for their ability to live both on land and in water. Since their eggs lack shells, they're laid in water, and they spend their larval stage in water too, but their adult stage on land. They breathe through their skin and lungs, and they have a three-chambered heart with one ventricle. Examples of amphibians are frogs and salamanders, and since they live in dry areas or sometimes near water, they have thick, scaly skin to resist water loss. Even their eggs resist water loss by having hard shells. Reptiles are the next class, and they breathe through their lungs. Examples are crocodiles, turtles, lizards, and snakes. The next class is Class Aves, or birds, which are tetrapods, meaning they have forelimbs and wings. They breathe through their lungs, have a four-chambered heart, they're endothermic, and they lay eggs with shells. In addition, they have a pretty cool respiratory system that only has one direction of gas exchange and takes 2 cycles of breathing to complete one respiratory cycle. So the last class is Class Mammalia, and they're named for the mammary glands that mammals use to nourish their young. Mammals are endothermic, they have hair, and they have a 4-chambered heart with 2 atrium and 2 ventricles. Most mammals give birth to live young, while some, called monotremes, lay eggs. And examples of this are the duck-billed platypus and echidnas. So thank you so much for watching. We hope that you learned something in this video, and stay tuned for more videos from YouShare Science.